What is a case study? There are some general definitions for a case study in literature. Three of them are shown here. Uh, General definitions include a type of qualitative research in which in depth data is gathered relative to a single individual program or event for the purpose of learning about an unknown. Another definition of a case study is that it is an empirical inquiry that investigates a contemporary phenomenon within its real life context. And then the third most popular definition is that it is still a form of research methodology which involves data analysis. So, in short, a case study places more emphasis on a full contextual analysis of a fewer events or conditions and their interrelations. Some of the characteristics of a case study include a focus on either single or multiple cases, the capacity to explain causal links, the importance of theory development in the research design phase, a reliance on multiple sources of evidence, and then the power to generalize the theory. So let's look at each of these individually. So the first characteristics focus on cases in their context. Essentially means focus on studying a setting or phenomenon, studying a case in relation to the complex dynamics with which it intersects. The second characteristic, capacity to explain causal links, means interpretive, historical, or qualitative strategies address the issues of causality. In other words, why something has occurred. Both of these strategies help to uncover the multiple, complex, and sometimes overlapping factors that eventually lead to particular outcomes. And then the next characteristics, role of theory development. Here, case studies may suggest what data must be collected, suggest what criteria should be used for analyzing it. And then multiple sources of evidence. This characteristic is a key feature of the case study. Archives, oral history, artifactual inventories, formal and spatial analysis are collected. And then the last characteristic, generalized to theory, is probably one of the case study's strength and can be tested through multiple experiments rather than a single experiment.
So data collection and analysis. Methods of data collection. There are several that you can use when you're conducting case studies. So first, you can make observations. Second, you can use interviews. And third, you can review relevant written documents and or audiovisual material. Steps to data analysis include organization of details about the case. You will need to categorization of data, the interpretation of single instances, identification of partners, and finally synthesis and generalizations. There are several common misunderstandings of case studies. First, general theoretical knowledge is more valuable than concrete practical knowledge, and we're going to go through each of these in detail. The second misunderstanding is that one cannot generalize on the basis of an individual case. Therefore, the case study cannot contribute to scientific development. The third, the case study is most useful for generating hypotheses, that is, in the first stage of a total research process, whereas other methods are more suitable for hypothesis testing and theory building. The fourth misunderstanding is that the case study contains a bias toward verification, that is, a tendency to confirm the researcher's preconceived notions. The fifth, it is often difficult to summarize and develop general propositions and theories on the basis of specific case studies. If you look at the Flyberg article, this article goes through each of these common misunderstandings and basically makes a case for why they are misunderstandings and how they are not true. So the first misunderstanding, predictive theories and universals cannot be found in the study of human affairs. And second, concrete, context-dependent knowledge is therefore more valuable than the vain search for predictive theories and universals. What this is saying is that context is actually really important when looking at case studies. It's actually a valuable asset. The case study number two, the misunderstanding number two, one can often generalize on the basis of a single case, and the case study may be central to scientific development via generalization as supplement or alternative to other methods. But formal generalization is overvalued as a source of scientific development, whereas the force of example is underestimated. Misunderstanding number three. This misunderstanding derives from the previous misunderstanding that one cannot generalize on the basis of individual cases. The case study is useful for both generating and testing of hypotheses, but is not limited to these research activities alone. Concerning considerations of strategy in the choice of cases, it should be mentioned that the various strategies of selection are not necessarily mutually exclusive. For example, a case study can be simultaneously extreme, critical, and paradigmatic. The interpretation of such a case can provide a unique wealth of information because one obtains various perspectives and conclusions on the case according to whether it is viewed and interpreted as one or another type of case. Misunderstanding number four, the bias toward verification is general, but the alleged deficiency of the case study and other qualitative methods is that they ostensibly allow more room for the researcher's subjective and arbitrary judgment than other methods. Therefore, the case study cannot contribute to scientific development. The case study contains no greater bias toward verification of the researcher's preconceived notions than other methods of inquiry. On the contrary, experience indicates that the case study contains a greater bias toward falsification of preconceived notions than toward verification. And finally, misunderstanding 5. It is correct that summarizing case studies is often difficult, especially as concerns case process. It is less correct as regards case outcomes. The problems in summarizing case studies, however, are due more often to the properties of the reality studied than to the case study as a research method. Often it is not desirable to summarize and generalize case studies. Good studies should be read as narratives in their entirety. It must again be emphasized that despite the difficulty or undesirability in summarizing case studies, the case study method in general can certainly contribute to the cumulative development of knowledge, for example, in using the principles to test propositions described above with regard to the second and third misunderstanding.
So the strengths of case studies include focus on the embeddedness of the case and its context, capacity to explain causal links, richness of multiple data sources, ability to generalize to theory, and then compelling and convincing when done well. The weakness of case studies include potential for overcomplication, causality likely to be multifaceted and complex, challenging of integrating many data sources in a coherent way, replication required in other cases, difficult to do well, fewer established rules and procedures than other research designs.